Good morning, Jack.
How you doing, Deepak?
How are you?
Doing great, doing great. Good morning.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming
Absolutely.
and taking the time out to talk to me. Would you like to start with telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you grew up?
Yeah. My name is Jack Armstrong, 19 years old at the moment. Main reason I'm here is because I run a business called Typewriter Co. I buy, sell, repair, and restore, and primarily collect antique typewriters. I have been running a full-time business off of this for the last 4 years, started in 2020 during the pandemic. I'm a self-taught repairman. There's not really a school you can go to learn how to repair typewriters. There's no real way other than trial and error. And I've spent the entire time I've been collecting and the entire time I've been repairing, honing in those skills and doing what I can to preserve the history of these typewriters for longer.
So, thank you. So you're 19 and you started this at the age of 15.
14 actually,
14.
a little bit younger, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I know any 14-year-old, working on old typewriters. So how did you get the inspiration to do this?
Well, I started out as just a simple collector of typewriters. That goes back even earlier to when I was 12 years old. I received my first one as a Christmas gift. That was a 1947 Royal typewriter. It needed some repairs, and it is something you can find videos on YouTube for cleaning and for simple fixes, and I was able to find that resource and simultaneously find out there's a world of people who collect typewriters and so many resources and so many friends to gain in this world. So that was my first typewriter. A few months later I had my second, and both of those I took apart, what's the word? Those few typewriters that I received initially, I kind of just superficially disassembled them. I didn't really dive into the mechanics at first. I kind of just wanted to take apart the body, maybe see how they worked a little bit more. That was like my first dive into this world. Growing up, I was always mechanical, and so I always loved working on typewriters, or anything really. With Lego sets as a much younger child, I was always building unique movements, mechanical things, whether they did something or not. If it moved, I was happy. I was taking apart clocks as a kid, and my parents hated that. Typewriters became an outlet for that mechanical nature of mine. They became a good resource to hone in my, I guess, spatial understanding skills. When you understand how each of those little parts move and what they're actually enacting in a typewriter. There's 2,000 to 3,000 parts in a standard typewriter. Understanding what each and every one of those do, it really helps understand your thinking, hone in your thinking skills.
Thank you. So mechanical curiosity is definitely one of the reasons why you do this, right?
Big driver.
Big drive. I'm curious about why not cars?
Well, good question. It was a car. Over the last 4 years, I sold the car last year. So I should say over the course of 3 years, I restored a 1972 Volkswagen Beetle. And I didn't get to do much with the car other than sell it and rebuild it, but the whole front end, I took apart the entire suspension, the control arms, the brakes, everything, and rebuilt that. I did the same in the rear end with the rear suspension. I was redoing the interior, and then eventually I got to the point I was taking out the engine of that car, tearing that one apart. I realized that engine was trash, and so I had to go start buying parts for a brand new engine, and that brought my price up to about 5 figures in terms of cost of rebuilding. Couldn't really afford that, and so I had to move on with the project. But from the chassis up, anything besides the engine, they were getting a good deal because I had that thing dialed in. It was nice.
So, but you, other than like the mechanical aspect of it, like whether it's cars or typewriters, so you also have this idea or desire to make something old and rusty, obsolete, to bring it back to life.
Absolutely. That's another joy of it. I mean, most of the typewriters I work on are not only older than my parents, but older than my grandparents. A lot of cases older than my great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents. Typewriters go that far back. And to realize that so many generations who grew up with these things, who had them as part of everyday life, who never really thought about the typewriter's future. They were focused on their own future and living their own lives, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
The typewriter's prolonged history is a story of resilience. It's amazing that they've even survived until today, and it's important that we preserve that history for the next generation.
So, typewriters came, I don't know, when were they first invented?
1874 was the first commercially successful
Right.
typewriter.
150 years later, we have things that you don't even have to type fast, but you can just dictate into the
Absolutely.
computer. But do you think the typewriters still bring a certain kind of aesthetic beauty?
Aesthetic beauty, and then there is the appeal of unplugging. I'd say a lot of my customers are people who fully exist in the digital world, who have maybe online businesses like myself. There is a certain amount with which you need to be online these days, and with that comes exhaustion and just what's the right word? I guess exhaustion works.
They are tired of basically
Right.
the word exhaustion.
Yes, tired of social media, of working online, of getting distracted in their writing. I know a lot of the writers I work with hate autocorrect. They hate getting an important email in the
Right.
middle of working on their script, and so they can unplug, they can go work on their typewriter, where all that does is write. It will not receive an email, it will not run out of battery, it just keeps going as long as you can keep going.
So I would like to compare this, thank you, what you just said, but with the old shift stick beetle.
Yeah,
So there is some kind of a pleasure when you change the gears.
Yeah.
It's like not just sitting in an old beetle, beautiful old car, but also the way it works. So the click and the clack and the hitting of the keys might also bring some kind of ASMR
Yes.
pleasure.
absolutely. I'd say my family profits off of that ASMR aspect more than I do. As I'm often working in the garage with my headphones in, blasting the loud music. I don't really hear what's going on, and
Right.
all they get to hear is the lovely symphony of bells and keys and paper and
Right.
everything else that comes along with the typewriter.
So you just said off the camera that there are not very many people left in Florida who actually work on old typewriters, and you are number 3, we said?
Yeah. I'm the third person in Florida currently working on typewriters. The other two are quite ancient, as they got into the world of typewriters when they were not obsolete. They were factory trained mechanics. So I certainly have plenty to learn from them. That being said, I'm one of the people who focuses on very early, unique typewriters that were before the standardization of the mechanical typewriter design. Before 1910, there was really a broad array of unique designs of typewriters, which we'll see later. Because of that, I have found a niche in that repairing community.
So you must be the youngest person working on, right?
Yeah, certainly in Florida, maybe not the world at this point,
Okay.
as there is quite a decent community of typewriter collectors who are younger. Though he is not younger than me, a very good friend of mine up in Chicago.
Mhm.
His name is Lucas Duell, and he runs a shop called Typewriter Chicago. He has his own brick and mortar store. He's only a few years older than I am.
Oh, wow.
I believe he's 23 or 24. But we've kind of built up our businesses at the same time and enjoyed each other's company and shared knowledge throughout that.
It's wonderful. So it's like some kind of a camaraderie there, right?
Absolutely.
So shout out to Luke. Right?
Shout out to Lucas.
Lucas. So who is your primary customer? Who people who are writers, or people who want to have it up right in their home or study just to make it look good? To feel what is?
I'd say I get more people who want to write than I get people who just want something for display. Honestly, if I can avoid it, I won't sell a typewriter to someone who's just looking to set it on a shelf and have it look pretty. If I can ensure it's going to be used at least sometimes, occasionally brought down to tap out a little letter to a friend. A lot of my close personal friends who have no interest in typewriters but are just friends with me, and so I force a typewriter upon them. I'll type them letters just to make sure they're typing letters back to me. Everything stays working in the typewriter, because just like a car, when they sit and they do nothing, they gum up, they get sticky, and they won't work as well. And once you consistently use them, you're free from those issues.
Thank you. So at 19, you're like, looks like you already have a 4 years experience in doing this, and
Yeah.
this is some kind of like an occupation or profession that gets you up in the morning, feeling excited. Does it give you some kind of purpose also? Like, you see yourself doing this for an unforeseeable future.
Unforeseeable future for sure, especially when it comes to just collecting typewriters and sharing that knowledge. At the bare minimum, I will always do that. That is really where the passion lies, is finding new machines and then documenting their histories and making that information available to people. Because I've spent the last 7 years doing what I can to learn as much as possible about typewriters. The resources are scattered about, let's say, and so my goal with the future of my business is to almost grow it into a museum.
Oh, wow.
And share the typewriters for the future.
Do you have any word of encouragement for people your age these days? What like you? I would not have guessed that you're only 19. So you have a lot of maturity, for somebody who's this young. So a lot of kids who are like teenagers could be lost, right? Without a purpose. What do you think? What would you say to them?
It's about finding your passion, and that may not come to you now. That may come in your future life, but don't force yourself into one thing. If you find it menial, if you find it annoying, don't do that. It's not for you. Even jobs you don't know exist are out there, and they're perfectly suited for you. I did not know running a business repairing typewriters was possible, let alone fiscally possible. It's shocking you can make money off of typewriters these days, but it's about being smart. It's about learning as much as you possibly can about the topic you want to study, the job you want to do in the future. Learn everything you can, meet as many people as you can who do that job, and truly befriend them. Don't just go to them for information, but make acquaintances with these people and get to know them and understand how are they outside of work, because all of that plays into helping yourself get where you want to be.
Thank you so much. This advice is not just for teenagers. This goes for anybody, right?
Absolutely.
At any age. Well, thank you. Let's go check out your typewriters.
Please.
All right, thank you. So, which one is this Corona? Right?
Yes, this is a 1940s Corona Silent. This is the standard typewriter that you're much more used to see. One thing we're going to pay attention to this in comparison to the others that I'll show you is the style of type. When you press a key, this is called your type bar. That swings forward and hits this rubber roller which holds the paper. That's called the plat. This is your standard mechanical typewriter. This is what you'd expect to see in basically anything you find in an antique shop. And this is in a fully working condition? Absolutely. This one's probably one of my nicest original typewriters I have.
Is it for sale? No.
Yeah.
How much is it?
This one, I'd put it at $420, $425, $430, around there.
$420?
Around about.
Okay. That's a pretty good price, actually. Thank you.
Next up, we're jumping into late 1890s, early 1900s. This is a unique style of typewriter. This is the Chicago. No guesses on where it was manufactured. Of course, in Chicago. These were what we call a type wheel design. They use a single element, whereas the Corona has this array of bars. On each bar there's 2 characters. On the Chicago, this is your type element, and that's only one piece. It's 360 degrees around. There's type on each and every side, and as you press a key, it will either rotate or shift side to side and print the character as you write. These were designed so you could easily interchange both the type style you were using and the language. It's like changing the font in Microsoft Word, but a lot slower and a bit more expensive because you have the physical piece with you.
Right.
But because that wasn't possible in typewriters like these, you needed typewriters that had this feature because you needed people who could quickly change to an italic typeface or bold characters or from English to German or whatever you needed. That was the typewriter for you.
And how much does this run for?
This one I personally paid $1,000 for it.
$1,000, okay. All right. That's good. You have more?
I do.
Okay.
This one's my baby.
All right.
We are looking at an early 1900s American model number 7. And the reason this specific typewriter is my baby is the American Typewriter Company. They were around from the early 1890s until 1915 they dissolved. The American typewriter, they were unsuccessful selling this machine in England as the American. For obvious reasons, they were not too fond of Americans. So they took the American label off and labeled it the Armstrong. My last name being Armstrong, of course I needed the typewriter that matched my own name.
Right.
But with that hunt for an Armstrong typewriter, it sparked a passion for this company in general, as I found not only were they labeling them the Armstrong, there were such a wide variety, well over a dozen different examples of the American. There's the Pullman, the Willard, the Fleet, the Sterling, and so many unique names that I've now been building up. Wait for this truck to pass.
Can you come here a second? The sun is not.
Yeah.
All right.
So with the American, I've been working on building up the most complete collection of them as I can. I have the first model their company ever produced, American Model 1, that was 1893 or 1894. They were doing that. This came on about 10 years later, 1904, maybe 1905 for this one. But the way these work is actually quite unique. These hit the bottom of the roller, so you can't see what you're writing as you're typing, as you could on the later Corona. And then these type bars are one singular piece from the key top all up until your typed slug at the bottom here. Whereas on a Corona, there's 5 or 6 different linkage points between the K and the actual K type bar. And so when you multiply 5 or 6 times the 42 to 44 keys that are on a keyboard, it's a lot of parts just going towards making the type bars hit the paper. And so American was able to save a lot of money back in the day by reducing the number of parts. This thing has only 323 parts in it. Typewriters of the day like this Chicago have well over 1,000. And so it really cut down on their costs, both production wise and then later in the sale of the typewriters. They were able to save a lot of money.
Do you think any of the famous authors, writers in America might have worked on any of these? Might have used?
I'd say more likely than not they used something like this. Those typewriters would have been considered impractical, though there are certainly authors who used impractical typewriters. But yes, the Corona here was a writer's choice for sure. Tom Hanks, a well-known collector of typewriters, praises this generation of Corona typewriters as some of the smoothest, nicest, best writing machines you can get. And plenty of authors and journalists and anyone else in the writing profession would use these typewriters and produce their works on them.
Well, thank you so much for the information and showing me your typewriters. It was lovely to talk to you and learn about your work.
Thank you, Deepak. Lovely to meet you. Lovely to talk with you. Always a great time to share the typewriters.